The first sign something was wrong wasn't his silence. It was the way my phone vibrated at 2:14 a.m. and stopped. Evan had promised to call after his late shift. One ring. Then nothing. No voicemail. No text. Just absence, thick and unsettling, like a door slammed somewhere in the dark. I stared at the ceiling, telling myself not to spiral. Weddings made people nervous. Stress did strange things. That was the lie I repeated until morning. By sunrise, Evan was officially missing. His side of the bed was cold. His toothbrush untouched. His overnight bag gone, but not his wallet. Not his watch. The watch I had given him for our engagement sat on the dresser, face down, like it was ashamed of me. I stood there in my robe, heart hammering, wedding dress hanging in its garment bag behind me like a ghost waiting to be acknowledged. A week. We were 7 days away from becoming husband and wife. I called him again. Straight to voicemail. I called his mother. Panic sharpened her voice when she said she hadn't heard from him either. I called his coworkers, his gym, even his old college roommate. No one had seen him since the night before. Somewhere between his goodbye kiss and midnight, Evan had vanished. By noon, I was crying on my kitchen floor, mascara streaked down my cheeks, clutching my phone like it might resurrect him through sheer will. That's when I called Lily. Lily, my best friend since high school. The woman who held my hand when my father died. Who helped Evan plan the proposal. Who had been my maid of honor, without question. She answered on the second ring.
"Hey," she said gently.
"What's wrong?" "Everything. Everything was wrong. He's gone," I sobbed. "Lily, Evan's gone. He didn't come home. No one knows where he is." There was a pause. Just a second too long. "That's strange," she said. "Maybe he needed space?" Pre-wedding nerves. The words felt rehearsed, smooth in a way that didn't match my chaos. I didn't notice then. I wanted comfort, not answers. "I can come over," she offered quickly. "Or, you know what? I can drive around. Check places. Maybe he went somewhere familiar." "Please," I whispered. "Please." Hours passed.
"No Evan. No Lily."
My phone buzzed with messages from vendors asking about final details. From relatives flying in early. From the dress boutique confirming my fitting. Every notification felt like mockery. I stopped answering. At dusk, something snapped inside me. Not dramatically, just quietly. A thin thread of certainty pulled tight. Evan hadn't disappeared. He had chosen to go somewhere. I grabbed my keys. I didn't know where I was going at first. I drove past the places that mattered to us. The park where we first kissed, the cafe where he proposed, the gym he swore he couldn't live without. Nothing. Just memories, staring back at me like witnesses who refused to testify. Then my phone buzzed again. A text from Lily. "Still looking. No luck yet. Don't worry, we'll find him. Don't worry." I don't know why, but my hands turned the steering wheel toward Cedar Lane, toward Lily's neighborhood. It made no sense. She lived alone. She'd been helping me look all day. Still, my chest tightened as her street came into view.
Her porch light was on.
And parked in her driveway, slightly crooked, like it had arrived in a hurry, was Evan's car. My heart didn't break all at once. It cracked, slowly, as I pulled over and stared at the house where my best friend lived, and where my fiancé had chosen to hide. I sat in my car for a full minute, engine still running, hands frozen on the steering wheel. Evan's car didn't belong there. I knew every scratch on that bumper, every stubborn squeak in the driver's door. I had teased him for never parking straight. And there it was, crooked, careless, unmistakably his. My first instinct was denial. Maybe Lily had picked it up for him. Maybe he'd dropped it off. Maybe I was finally losing my mind under the pressure of the wedding. Then I noticed the light upstairs. Lily always said she hated using the guest room. Too lonely, she joked. Yet the glow came from that very window, spilling faintly through half-drawn curtains. My stomach twisted. I turned off the engine. The night felt too quiet as I stepped out of the car. Even the gravel under my shoes sounded loud, accusatory. With each step toward the house, my heartbeat grew heavier, like it was trying to slow me down, begging me not to see what waited inside. I reached the front door. It wasn't locked. That detail cut deeper than it should have. "Lily," I called softly, my voice trembling despite my effort to sound normal. No answer. The living room looked the same as always, neat, curated, scented with vanilla candles. My engagement photo with Evan sat on her bookshelf, smiling back at me from a silver frame. I wondered how many times she'd dusted around it while knowing what she was doing. I took another step inside. That's when I heard it. Laughter.
Low. Familiar. Male.
Evan's laugh. It came from upstairs. My knees nearly gave out. For a moment, I pressed my palm to the wall, steadying myself, breathing through the nausea rising in my throat. I wanted to scream his name, to charge up the stairs and demand an explanation that would somehow make this okay. Instead, I climbed slowly. Each step felt like a countdown. Halfway up, I saw a jacket draped over the banister. Evan's jacket. The one I bought him last winter because he said the cold made his shoulders ache. I touched the sleeve. Still warm. The door to the guest room was slightly open. Light spilled into the hallway, and voices floated through the gap, soft now, intimate. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this," Lily said. "You didn't force me," Evan replied. "I chose this." Those words landed harder than any confession. I pushed the door open. They froze. Evan sat on the edge of the bed, shirt unbuttoned, hair messy in the way it only ever was after we'd been together. Lily stood near him, wrapped in a robe that didn't quite close at the front. My robe, one I'd left at her place months ago, after a sleepover. For a second, none of us spoke. Then Evan looked up at me. Not with guilt. Not with shock. But with relief. "You weren't supposed to find out like this," he said quietly. I laughed, a short, broken sound that surprised even me. "Like what?" I asked. "At my best friend's house? A week before our wedding." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Please," she whispered. "Let us explain." Explain. I looked at the man I was supposed to marry and the woman who was supposed to stand beside me in a white dress and hold my bouquet. My hand shook, but my voice was steady when I spoke. "Go ahead," I said. "Tell me how long my life has been a lie." Neither of them answered right away. And in that silence, I understood something terrifying. This hadn't started yesterday. The silence stretched until it hurt. Evan looked at Lily. Lily looked at the floor. That single exchange told me more than any confession could. They were deciding who would betray me again by speaking first. "It didn't start how you think," Lily finally said. I let out a slow breath, the kind you take before walking into deep water. "Then tell me how it started." Evan stood up, pulling his shirt closed like modesty could undo what I had already seen. "We didn't plan this. It just happened." "That's funny," I said flatly, "because affairs usually don't happen without time." Lily flinched. Her reaction was my answer. "How long?" I asked. She swallowed. "A few months." A few months. While she helped me choose wedding shoes. While she cried happy tears at my dress fitting. While she held my hands and promised this was my forever. "A few months," I repeated, tasting the words like poison. "So, when you came with me to book the venue." "I knew," she whispered. "When you planned my bachelorette night?" "I knew. When you stood in my kitchen and told me I was lucky to have him?" Her tears spilled over. "I knew." I turned to Evan. "And you?" He rubbed his face, suddenly exhausted. I didn't know how to stop it. That made me laugh again, louder this time. "You didn't know how to stop sleeping with my best friend?" "It wasn't just physical," he said quickly. "We connected. In ways you and I don't," I warned. "Do not finish that sentence." He stopped, but the damage was already done. The implication hung in the air. "What you give me isn't enough." "So," I said slowly, "let me guess. You didn't disappear. You ran." Evan nodded. I panicked. The wedding felt wrong. "Wrong," I echoed. "Or inconvenient." Lily stepped forward. "He was going to tell you. We both were." "When?" I asked. "After the honeymoon? After the paperwork?" Or after you stood beside me at the altar and smiled. She broke down then, sobbing into her hands. I was going to end it. I swear. I looked at her, really looked at her. At the woman who had slept in my bed, worn my clothes, shared my secrets. Who knew every fear I had about abandonment. And yet, I said, here he is. In your house. In my robe. Evan opened his mouth, then closed it again. Why now? I asked him. Why disappear instead of telling me? Because I knew you'd convince me to stay, he said quietly. And I didn't trust myself. That sentence shattered something final inside me. So you trusted her, I said. But not me. He didn't deny it. I stepped back, suddenly aware of how small the room felt, how suffocating. Do you love her? Lily froze. Evan hesitated just a fraction too long. I care about her. That was enough. I reached for the ring on my finger, the ring he'd slid on with shaking hands and a promise of forever. My fingers were steady as I pulled it off and placed it on the dresser. This was supposed to be sacred, I said. Not transferable. Lily shook her head. Please don't do this like that. Like what? I asked. With dignity. I walked toward the door. Wait, Evan said, panic finally breaking through his calm. We need to talk about the wedding.
The guests.
The money. I turned back, eyes cold. You disappeared a week before our wedding. You let me think you were dead or hurt. I gestured around the room. Figure it out. As I walked down the stairs, something inside me hardened. Not into rage, but resolve. They had chosen each other. Now I would choose myself. And I would not leave quietly. I didn't cry on the drive home. That surprised me. I expected screaming, sobbing, something dramatic enough to match the way my life had just collapsed. Instead, there was only a dull pressure behind my eyes and a strange clarity settling in, like fog lifting to reveal wreckage you can't unsee. When I pulled into my driveway, the house looked exactly the same. Warm lights. Curtains drawn. Inside, wedding programs sat stacked neatly on the dining table, my handwriting looping happily across the covers. A box labeled honeymoon rested by the door, filled with swimsuits I would never wear. I locked the door behind me and slid down against it. That's when my phone started vibrating. Missed calls, texts, voicemails piling up like unanswered prayers. Evan's name filled the screen first. I ignored it. Then Lily. Please come back. We can talk. I never meant to hurt you. You're my sister. I blocked her number. The silence afterward was immediate and brutal. I stood up, walked to the bedroom, and unzipped the garment bag, holding my wedding dress. Ivory lace spilled out, delicate and unforgiving. Just a week ago, I'd stood in front of a mirror, Lily behind me, fastening the buttons with trembling fingers. You look like someone who's about to be loved forever, she had said. I laughed then, too. I pulled the dress from its hanger and dropped it onto the bed. The sound it made, soft fabric hitting sheets, felt louder than it should have. I sat beside it and finally cried, quietly, like someone grieving without witnesses. By morning, the world knew. Evan's mother called first. Her voice cracked as she apologized for her son, for not raising him better, for loving me like a daughter and losing me overnight. I thanked her and told her I needed space. She understood. Friends followed. Confused messages. Concerned ones. Some already knew. News traveled fast when scandal was involved. A few asked questions that felt invasive, like they were choosing sides before the facts settled. I canceled the venue with shaking hands. The florist. The photographer. Each call felt like erasing a version of myself that had believed in something permanent. Then I called Evan. He answered immediately. I'm not calling to fix this, I said before he could speak. I'm calling to be clear. He was quiet. The wedding is off. I'm keeping my last name. You'll cover half the cancellation costs. Don't argue. Don't negotiate. I never meant for this to explode like this, he said. You disappeared, I replied. That is the explosion. I loved you, he said softly. Love doesn't hide in someone else's house, I said and hung up. By evening, The anger finally arrived. It wasn't loud. It was focused. I opened my laptop and drafted a message. Short, factual, impossible to twist. The wedding scheduled for next week is canceled. Evan chose to leave and pursued a relationship with someone else. I appreciate your understanding and privacy during this time. I sent it to the group chat. Within minutes, my phone lit up again.
Support poured in. Shock.
Outrage on my behalf. And then, inevitably, screenshots. Someone had already posted a photo of Evan's car outside Lily's house. Someone else had seen them together weeks ago and stayed silent. The truth spread, piece by piece, like glass catching the light. That night, I stood alone in my living room, surrounded by half-packed boxes and unopened gifts. I realized something important. They hadn't just betrayed me. They had underestimated me. And that would be their biggest mistake. By the third day, the shock had worn off. What replaced it was something sharper, awareness. I started noticing the small details I had ignored before. The late-night work calls. The way Evan had grown distant whenever Lily was around, like he was holding back a version of himself I wasn't allowed to see. The inside jokes. The looks that lasted half a second too long.
Hindsight is cruel like that.
It waits until you're bleeding to explain where the knife came from. My phone buzzed nonstop, but one message cut through the noise. From Lily's sister. You deserve to know the truth.
Can we talk?
We met at a quiet cafe across town. A neutral place. Lily's sister, Mara, looked uncomfortable, like someone carrying a secret too heavy to keep any longer. They didn't tell you everything, she said after we sat down. I wrapped my hands around my coffee cup, steadying myself. I assumed as much. Mara took a breath. It didn't start a few months ago. It started last year. The room seemed to tilt. Last year? I repeated. She nodded. Right after your engagement party. I walked in on them arguing at Lily's place. They claimed it was nothing, but I knew. Lily begged me not to say anything. Said she was confused. Said it would end. It hadn't. They planned this, Mara continued. The timing. Evan didn't just panic. He was waiting until everything was irreversible. Until you were too invested to walk away easily. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not heartbreak this time, but clarity. So the wedding, I said slowly, was never really going to happen. Mara shook her head. Not the way you thought. When I left the cafe, the city felt different. Not cruel, just honest. I wasn't unlucky. I wasn't unlovable. I had been targeted by two people who benefited from my trust. That night, Evan showed up at my house. I hadn't given him permission. I hadn't answered his calls. But there he was, standing on my porch like he still belonged there. I just want closure, he said when I opened the door. Closure is a privilege, I replied. You forfeited it. I need you to understand, he insisted. Lily and we didn't mean for it to go this far. You mean you didn't mean to get caught, I said. He flinched. I loved you, he said again, like repetition could resurrect meaning.
No, y correcta calmly.
You loved how safe I made you feel. She loved how exciting you made her feel. And neither of you loved me enough to stop. That was when his anger surfaced. You're acting like a victim, he snapped. People fall out of love. People who fall out of love don't disappear, I said. They speak. Silence followed. I want my ring back, he finally said. I smiled then, not because it was funny, but because it was revealing. It's already gone, I said. Sold. His face drained of color. You can't do that. I can, I replied. It was a gift. And I needed the reminder gone. He left without another word. The next morning, Lily posted a photo online. Her hand intertwined with Evan's. A caption about choosing happiness. The comments were brutal. She deleted it within an hour. What she didn't understand yet was this. Public sympathy fades. But reputations remember. And mine was just beginning to recover, while theirs was starting to rot. The city chose sides faster than I expected. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quietly, in the way invitations stopped coming to Lily, in the way Evan's name disappeared from conversations like it had become impolite to mention him. People didn't confront them. They adjusted around them. And that, I learned, was worse. I moved through my days with purpose. I returned gifts with calm efficiency. I closed the joint account. I removed Evan from emergency contacts, from passwords, from the future I had once planned in bullet points and shared calendars. Each small action felt like reclaiming territory. One afternoon, my phone rang from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. It was Lily. I had blocked her everywhere else. She must have borrowed a phone. "I just want 5 minutes," she said, her voice thin. Not to defend myself. Just to explain. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet. Public place, daylight, no surprises. She looked smaller when I saw her. Not fragile, just diminished. Her confidence, once effortless, now carried desperation like a bad perfume. "I lost everything," she said almost immediately. "My friends. My job is on the line. People won't even look at me." I waited. "I know I betrayed you," she continued, tears gathering. "But you don't understand how lonely I was. You had everything. The life. The certainty." I leaned back. "So you took mine?" She shook her head quickly. "I didn't think you'd be hurt like this." I studied her face, the same face I had trusted with my grief, my joy, my fears. "Lily," I said evenly, "you knew exactly how this would hurt me. That's why you hid it." Her mouth opened, then closed. "I loved him," she whispered. "I loved you," I replied. "That's the difference." She reached across the table. I stood before she could touch me. "This is the last time we speak," I said. "Not because I hate you, but because I refuse to carry the consequences of your choices any longer." As I walked away, she called my name once. I didn't turn back. A week later, the final bills were settled. Evan tried to contest the ring sale legally. It went nowhere. The law was on my side, but more importantly, so was the truth. Then something unexpected happened. Evan lost his job. Not officially because of the affair, but because of conduct concerns that had apparently existed long before me. I wasn't surprised. People who betray easily rarely do it only once. Lily moved in with him. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Mutual friends told me their relationship was already strained. Arguments, accusations. The slow realization that excitement built on secrecy rarely survives daylight. I didn't celebrate. I just felt finished. One evening, as I boxed up the last remnants of wedding decor, I found my old journal. Inside were pages I'd written years ago, before Evan, before Lily's role in my life expanded beyond friendship. One sentence stood out. "I want a life that doesn't require me to beg to be chosen." I closed the journal. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in weeks. I understood then that betrayal doesn't always destroy you. Sometimes, it exposes the truth early enough to save you. And sometimes, the people who hurt you the most unknowingly clear the path for the life you were meant to live. Without them, one chapter remained. Not of revenge, of release. A year passed. Not in dramatic leaps or cinematic moments, just in ordinary days that slowly stitched me back together. Mornings without dread. Evenings without waiting for someone who might not come home. Peace arrived quietly, the way it always does when it's real. I moved. Not far, just enough to breathe differently. A smaller place with wide windows and no memories attached to the walls. I painted it myself. Soft colors. Clean lines. Nothing borrowed from a past that didn't earn the right to follow me. People stopped asking about the wedding.
They started asking about me.
I took a promotion I would have declined before, afraid of disrupting our plans. I traveled alone. First awkwardly, then confidently. I learned that solitude wasn't emptiness. It was space.
Space to think, to choose, to rest.
One afternoon, I ran into Evan's mother at the grocery store. She hugged me without warning. "I'm sorry," she said simply, "for everything." "I know," I replied and meant it. She told me Evan and Lily were no longer together. The relationship that had begun in secrecy had ended in suspicion. Trust, once broken, rarely rebuilds on stolen ground. I felt nothing when she said it.
No satisfaction. No sorrow.
Just distance. That was when I knew I was free. Months later, Lily sent me an email. Long, apologetic. Filled with reflection and regret. She didn't ask for forgiveness. Only acknowledgement. I never replied. Some endings don't need witnesses. On what would have been my wedding anniversary, I took the day off work. Not to mourn, but to honor survival. I walked through the city, sat in a quiet cafe, and wrote a letter to my past self. You weren't abandoned because you were unlovable. You were betrayed because you trusted deeply. That was never your flaw. I folded the letter and let it go. That evening, I met friends for dinner, people who had stayed, who hadn't needed explanations to stand beside me. Laughter filled the table. Real laughter. The kind that doesn't echo with doubt. Later, alone in my apartment, I caught my reflection in the mirror. I looked different. Not harder. Stronger. I thought back to the night I stood outside that house on Cedar Lane, staring at a truth I never asked for. I remembered the fear, the shock, the heartbreak. And I realized something important. That night didn't ruin my life. It revealed it. The man who disappeared before the wedding saved me from a marriage built on deception. The friend who betrayed me freed me from a bond rooted in imbalance. They chose each other. And in doing so, they gave me back to myself. I turned off the light and went to bed, not haunted by what was lost, but grounded in what was found.
Peace.
And a future that would never again require me to beg to be chosen.